Everybody. Welcome to the Columbia County Economic Development Committee meeting for October. Tonight we're going to start with an update from Chris Nardone from Workforce Development. Chris?
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. So I'm Chris Nardone from Workforce Development. I was here about a month ago, right before the pandemic unemployment expired, and we had talked about expecting an uptick in visitors to the office. And I kind of want to just give a quick update of those things. So we have seen a substantial increase in the number of people that are coming into the office looking for jobs. But there are two trends that are that have kind of taken over the rest of the picture. So we're seeing a lot more people coming in and looking for jobs. So a lot more job seekers, but most of them are only looking for jobs over the course of maybe 1 or 2 days. There's so much demand for job seekers that no one is engaged in the job search process for more than a week at this point. So it's created this situation where people can really leave their job for any reason because there are just so many jobs out there. So a lot of the people that we're seeing come in are not people that were displaced by the pandemic and are returning to the workforce, but people that are leaving current jobs looking for new jobs that are either paying more or offer a better work environment or more flexibility. So the main trend has been people will come in on a Monday, say they'll ask us for help with their resume. They'll ask us to kind of help them walk through the job search process. We'll follow up with them on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they already have 2 or 3 job interviews scheduled and have been offered a job based on just a phone interview. So this creates it's a really great situation for job seekers, obviously, because there's a lot more control from the perspective of a job seeker. They can leave jobs pretty readily and make sure, and there are jobs available for them to go to, oftentimes within a day or 2, and they're not even missing a paycheck. But it creates a really difficult situation for businesses that we work with because it's causing the demand for employees has created this, this volatility in wages and caused a lot of wage compression for businesses. And it's really caused businesses to take a good look at their work culture and how they can kind of keep a hold of some of these job seekers because it is so easy for people to find jobs. There are just so many jobs and so few job seekers in the county that people can kind of transition from one job to another pretty easily. So while we had expected to see people after the pandemic unemployment expired and after there was a little more stability in the schools, we are seeing people, but it's not a result necessarily of those things bringing people back into the workforce. It's more the wage volatility and the ease of access to transition from one job to the next. The other trend that we're seeing is that the people that were displaced due to the pandemic and are looking to return to the workforce are not coming to our office for jobs. They're coming to our office for training grants. So we're seeing people that were in those low wage, kind of low skill, labor intensive positions, somebody who was a hostess or working at the back of the house at a restaurant, was displaced by the pandemic, had been out of work for a pretty substantial amount of time and is ready now to come back into the workforce and is coming to our office so that we can help support them with tuition for a training. So again, a really great situation for job seekers and people that are coming back into the workforce because they were making $12.50 an hour, and now they're coming to us and getting trained to be welders or LPNs or phlebotomists or any variety of other positions and going back into the workforce in a middle skill or professional capacity. So it again, there's that same theme where it's really great for people that are looking for jobs and are looking to upskill, but it compounds the problem for businesses and people that are looking for entry-level positions, for people to fill these entry-level positions. Because the people that were filling those positions were displaced by the pandemic and are re-entering the workforce upskilled or with a new skill set into a job that's a middle skill position and a higher paid position. So I think overall what we've seen as the pandemic unemployment assistance ended and the school districts are coming back into session, we're really seeing a growing difficulty for businesses to fill entry-level, low-skill, traditionally lower-paying positions. And because of that, there's been a lot of wage volatility that's caused some wage compression for the businesses, and again, made it more difficult for them in the long run because it's driving even middle skill wages up now. So we don't necessarily expect that to change in the near future. We think that this trend will probably continue over the course of the next year or so. We'll continue to see wage volatility, and we'll continue to see people that were traditionally in low skill positions either transitioning from one workplace to another in search of those higher wages and sign-on bonuses, or going back to school or going through a training process to get a position that pays better and offers more quality of life. So again, there's kind of this double-edged sword, right? It's very good for job seekers. It is absolutely a job seekers market, and it creates a really difficult situation for businesses as they attempt to recruit and fill these positions that are kind of bottom entry-level positions. And I think a lot of us have probably seen it as we try to go to restaurants or go to any of these kind of service sector places where their hours are sometimes limited, or there's only one or two waitresses that are working at a time. So what we've been doing to work with businesses, our job with job seekers is really pretty simple. We can help people get employed by the end of the week. They wouldn't even miss a paycheck if they left a job. We can absolutely help people skill up and fill those positions. But the bulk of our work over the past few months has been with businesses trying to support them in how to fill a lot of these positions. So one thing that we've done is really go with the retention messaging. It's super important for businesses to keep a hold of the staff that they have, because there's no promise that there are going to be people to replace those positions. So we've been encouraging businesses to think, rather than recruitment bonuses and recruitment wage increases, to look at those things to retain the staff that they already have with retention bonuses, and make sure that your current staff are not getting compressed so much by the incoming staff. We also had an opportunity with Mike and CEDC a few weeks ago to bring together about 70 HR professionals and business leaders and organizational leaders to kind of talk about the context of all of this and what the national demographic trends look like and how those translate to our local demographics. And it was a really successful presentation, which is available if anybody's interested. We recorded it. It was an MC presentation, which is an economic modeling organization. And then Mike and myself and Jeff Friedman from Greene County Chamber did a roundtable to talk about kind of what those demographic changes and what the situation looks like in our two counties. So we've been really trying to get out to businesses and let them know that there are just not a lot of people out there to recruit. So the major weight of their efforts should probably be in retention. So just, some of the numbers that we're spitting out, right? There's only really, according to the Department of Labor in September, there's only 400 people that are unemployment claimants in Columbia County right now. So the total number of people receiving unemployment at the end of September was 400, which is a really small number when you consider the needs of the county and that there's over 2,000 unique job postings in the county right now. So we're talking about a real labor shortage, I think, and at least for the midterm, right? Maybe the next year or so, I think the wage volatility will probably continue. I think the resignation and turnover will probably continue, and a lot of people will be moving from businesses that they even had worked with for a substantial amount of time to other businesses because of really any reason. People don't really need a reason to resign right now because there are just so many jobs available. So I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. So that's pretty much the update of what we're seeing at the workforce office. It is absolutely a job seekers market right now, and businesses are really, really struggling to fill those all positions, but especially entry-level, low-skill, labor-intensive positions. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, but I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah, I have a question to start out with, and that is, what salary are you seeing as an entry point for folks to accept, an employment, not as a low-skilled entry-level job, but just above that? What's the number that people are looking at?
I think what we're seeing is about $18 an hour. The expectation for a wait person or a back of the house kitchen staff entry level is about $16 an hour. And the main reason for that is because you can find jobs at McDonald's, say, for $16 an hour now. So I think people in their mind are kind of equating those entry level jobs, and then you go up to the next level. It's probably about $18 an hour is what we're hearing generally from people for that next level up.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Sterling?
Yeah, are you open on Saturdays?
We are not open on Saturday. We're open Monday through Friday from 8 to 4 right now. We do offer virtual appointments. So if someone needed to see us on a Saturday and they called to schedule an appointment, we can be available to them, but our office is not open on a Saturday typically.
Okay, because it seems like you're working 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 every day. Can't get to you.
Yeah, well, our office generally works with people who are looking for job seekers or people that are looking for training. So typically someone who's employed wouldn't necessarily need to come see us. But we are super flexible with appointments. So if someone does call, we can flex our schedule to accommodate that.
Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Collins?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Chris and Mike Tucker, for that roundtable. I sat in on that, and it was an incredibly informative presentation, really showing the trend occurring much before COVID struck and how this has been happening for quite some time now. Where can I find that recording? Is that on your website? Because I'd really like to post that. I thought it was very informative.
I can send it out to this group after the meeting.
Terrific. Thank you, Mike. I thought it was excellent. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, we thought it was important just to lend some context. I don't know that businesses they knew there were no workers, but they didn't quite understand why. And I think people were really expecting when the pandemic the pandemic unemployment assistance was keeping people from the workforce. And when they did not come back, we thought it was important to pull everybody together and say, listen, this is a much bigger problem than just unemployment. And it's a demographic issue. It's just a numbers issue. And businesses, all of us need to really reassess the way that we're looking at recruiting employees, because there just are fewer of them. And we now, I've said it a few times, have a secondary customer. There's your customer that you've been working with for the past 50 years. But now your potential employee and your employees have become a customer in their own way. And you really have to cater to their needs to at least some extent to keep them happy and keep them employed, or you're going to have a really difficult time.
And one last thing, I mean, we've really seen a spike in median home sale prices, since COVID. I mean, there's got to be a direct link there too to, what's going on with filling these positions.
Yeah, I think I had talked with Jeff Friedman in Greene County, and we had kind of discussed the fact that even if we could bring people into the county, there really isn't anywhere for them to live. So we talked, some other areas are looking at immigration and trying to recruit people to come into their counties, but it would be really difficult for a person who is a working class person to come into the county and really find a place to live. And we've talked with businesses who are having difficulty recruiting because of that reason specifically. They have a seasonal business, or they rely on J1 workers that are coming in from overseas, and they really can't even find a place to house those workers right now that's affordable to them, and it's causing a real barrier. I will not ever pretend to have any idea about a solution to that problem, but I do know that housing has been a real difficulty for people, and it has led, at least some degree, it has exacerbated the situation.
Thank you, Chris.
Supervisor Chimides?
Yeah, thanks. I have a couple questions. So the first is just piggybacking off of that. Well, I think it would be helpful to be able to explain to the public that housing is a challenge, because I often certainly just like narrative or sort of like messaging wise, I think people are often sort of afraid of affordable housing, and they sort of see it as like a drain on the economy. But I actually think in this conversation, it's really the inverse, is that for our businesses to be able to sustain themselves, we actually need to have more affordable housing in our economy. And so I think that would be helpful to have some of our agencies to be able to sort of explain that, certainly housing is a barrier. And along those lines, I'm curious if you see other barriers such as access to childcare, public transportation that also might be limiting the ability for people to sort of join the workforce?
Yeah, I think that those are the three major barriers that we see in our experience. And we offer some subsidy to people to help pay for those things and make them more affordable for people as they're returning to work. And those are the three supportive services that we offer more than anything. Affordable housing, we have an economy that's kind of built on service, right? We have a lot of people that, especially that have come into the county, that really expect a level of service and a level of accommodation from the area. But we don't necessarily have the workforce to provide those services sustainably over the long term, especially right now. So I think in order to maintain the quality of life we've all come to expect and to keep the economy churning, we need to address the issue of bringing, whether or not housing is the real issue, finding a way to bring people in. And if you bring them in, they need a place to live. So I think affordable housing is definitely important. Public transportation has been a real challenge for us. Transportation in general, in our area, the average commute is about 20 minutes to work. So even if you have a car, having access to a quality car and paying for gas, all of those things kind of become a barrier to employment. Beyond even public transportation, your private transportation adds to the cost of getting to work. And oftentimes that compounded with childcare costs makes it not economically feasible to go to work at all. It's less expensive to not work than it is to go to work if you factor in the cost of transportation and the cost of childcare. And childcare in and of itself, there just is effectively no childcare available in Columbia County. I mean, for all intents and purposes, outside of the informal networks that people have kind of developed themselves, there is not a childcare service available in Columbia County in any real practical way that people are going to be able to use. So I agree. I think those three things that you listed are the real barriers to employment. There are other things, but if we could alleviate some of those three, I think it would be the best move, in my opinion, to get people back into the workforce. Yeah.
Great, I appreciate that. My other question is, I just wanted to ask about the sort of is there a certain skill set or training that you feel like you're best positioned to offer? And so if workers are looking to sort of scale up, what are the kind of workers you're looking for, and where do you think you can bring them to?
So our office is a granting agency. So we don't provide any training services ourselves. We provide a grant subsidy for people to go to other training providers. Okay. So the things that we do see, for eligibility for our purposes, a person needs to, if they're employed, a person needs to be making less than $18 an hour. That's essentially the limit. And if a person is unemployed, they are most often eligible for our services. And basic skills really is all you need. We work with a lot of training providers. So we can, if they're interested in something, it has to be an in-demand occupation. That's the other thing for us to be able to fund it. But there's a list of in-demand occupations for our region on our website, but it's pretty much everything you'd expect. CDL drivers, skilled trades, hospitality, tourism, kind of everything that's happening in the county. So if someone is making less than $18 an hour or is unemployed, they are most likely eligible to receive training funds from us.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Supervisor Basson?
First, Chris, thank you very much for your update. I think this is very, very interesting and extremely concerning. And I guess from my perspective, what we're talking about is the need to create 1,000 to 2,000 affordable housing units over a reasonable period of time so we can attract the young families that we're going to need to source the jobs and provide the services for the county. And I think the county needs to basically step back and think about whether or not committing to doing 1,000 or 2,000 homes over a period of time is necessary, realistic, and achievable. And Mike, I think this is something you ought to put on your list, and I will agitate with Mr. Morrell to see if we can get the county to commit to something like that, because until we create the housing, we're not going to attract the people. And until we attract the people, we're not going to be able to fill the jobs or the fire companies or the the public services that we need. So I guess from my point of view, housing is the critical variable. And Chris, again, thank you.
Yeah, I think however it happens, the problem is that there are not enough bodies to fill these positions. The economy wants to grow. Businesses want to grow. All we hear all the time at our office is that they need people, right? Restaurants have reduced their hours. There is a market for all of these services, and there are simply not enough working class people to fill these positions. So I think one of the major factors is that there is really no affordable place for people to live in Columbia County. And even for people that are, middle class families, local middle class families are having a difficult time, buying homes and even finding rental properties that are affordable in the county. So I would agree that we need people to come into the county, and in order to do that, we need a place for them to live.
And just let me add a personal note here. We run a horse farm here in Ankrum, and the only way we can attract people is to provide housing. So we have about 6 different houses that we use for employees. If we didn't have these houses, we would have no employees and we would have no business. And we're in the process now of building another house so we can attract a couple of more people. And this is the critical variable, I think.
And we're hearing that from other businesses, that especially seasonal employees that are coming in the summer for the tourism, or in the winter for some of the winter sports jobs, it's really housing and having a place for them to stay has been the limiting factor.
And one of the things that we've been working on, and we're moving forward now with Pattern for Progress as they've completed their report, finalizing their report for the city, is three areas of focus. One, of course, are in those limited areas in the county that have water, sewer, gas, electric, and broadband at the same place, where multifamily housing can be built. The other is to look at smaller projects, 4 to 6 units where they can go on septic and well, and then a program that would help people basically restore their houses and get them back to where they have new windows and the wood rot is gone, and the heating and electrical systems and plumbing systems are addressed through rehab in those areas where they're truly limited by infrastructure services.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything for Chris?
Well, just one more comment in terms of our vision. I think if Chris says there are 2,000 job openings that we don't have anyone to fill, I think we need to be thinking about housing to house 2,000 families. And Mike, that gives you something to think about, I would hope.
Well, yes. At the same time, as you know, there are 2 projects that are on the drawing boards for affordable and low income in Hudson that had considerable opposition for a variety of reasons. There's a project that is soon to be announced for 150 units in Greenport, and you're still 1,700 units away. So, this is something that it's going to take considerable focus and considerable support for additional infrastructure, and dealing with people who, particularly at the affordable and low income housing range, I was shocked by some opposition where there was one person opposed to the projects in Hudson on the basis that 800 people, there are 800 less people in Hudson since 2010, according to the census. And their conclusion was most of those people had been displaced by gentrification, and therefore the market for affordable and low income housing had been reduced, and therefore these projects weren't necessary. So, it's going to take a community leadership beyond infrastructure and finding developers to stand up and ensure that viable projects in appropriate locations are supported from a community and political standpoint.
I will ask
I
Mike.
completely agree. Thanks, Mike. And thank you, Chris.
I'd like to follow up with just one clarifying question, at least in my own mind. Out of these roughly 2,000 jobs that are not getting filled, how many of them would ordinarily be filled by teenagers working part-time? In a Stewart's or in a McDonald's or something like that? Because when we're talking about 2,000 housing units, I'm just wondering how many of we subtract out of that, because you got kids that are living at home that just aren't taking these jobs. Do you have any idea, Chris?
I don't necessarily have an idea of the exact number, but what I can say to that 2,000 jobs is that's 2,000 unique postings on sites like Indeed and Monster. So that doesn't count multiple positions that have the same title, right? So one of those postings could represent 3 or 4 jobs. So I think 2,000 is not an unrealistic number of jobs that are working class jobs.
Okay.
That really need to be filled. If you kind of look out and remove all of the duplicate postings, I think those could probably account for a lot of the high school jobs and that are normally filled by kids. And those jobs are also oftentimes summer jobs or seasonal jobs, and not necessarily full-time jobs over the course of the year. But I don't think that 2,000 is an unrealistic number to represent the actual number of jobs that are in need.
It sounds like there are a lot more than 2,000 jobs if they're all unique, and there could be multiples for some of these things. Okay,
it does not count jobs that were not posted that are not retrievable from the internet. So every every business that has 5 employees that just put a sign out front that said help wanted, those positions are not counted in that number. So the economic modeling only pulls from what's available online. So the actual number is probably substantially larger than 2,000.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything for Chris? Chris, thank you very much. Looking forward to the next time you can come and visit with us.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm always available if anybody wants. This is our bread and butter, right? All we do at our office is this type of issue. So if anybody ever wants to have a conversation or has any questions, please feel free to reach out. And you guys have a wonderful night.
You too, thanks. Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chris. It's been great partnering with you. And these are issues that are all integrated into the work we both do. In connection with the county broadband study, we did get a call this week. I had a call this week in response to a request from Chairman Morrell to contact the representative of ECC, who's been retained by the Public Service Commission in response to the governor's direction to undertake a statewide survey to identify where the gaps in broadband are. And when I shared with him the results of our study, including the map and the updated lists and our ongoing conversations and efforts with the providers to give us indication as to which of the 1,200 identified 911 addresses that are not served at 100 MPS, they're interested in. He was very impressed and taken back, and only wished that we had been working with his company. At the same time, I'm wondering if he's going to take our data and plug it into his system. Are we just going to have been ahead of the curve, but at the same time get in line with 62 other counties? So we continue to have direct conversations with the providers to ask them. We should have a list within another 10 days of which of the 1,200 addresses that are on the periphery of their existing systems that they would like to be considered to add to their systems. One of the things that's come up is, whether or not the towns or the county have end up ultimately allocating ARPA money to broadband, and when the $850,000 from Congressman Delgado for the 4 identified the addresses in the 4 identified towns for that project, whether that money is allocated, does that put us at a disadvantage? Because if we just saw this USDA announcement. Senator Schumer was in Western New York this weekend announcing how much broadband money there would be in the bill that is being finally negotiated in Washington now. Do we wait for that money, or do we spend the money we have and risk losing reimbursement out of the infrastructure broadband money for the ARPA money that we took and spent on broadband? Now, if you're one of the 1,200 addresses that have not yet been served, you would like to see us move faster. But to the extent that we use ARPA money and then money comes behind that we would have otherwise been able to use, you're giving up an opportunity to do something else with that ARPA money. So it's something we're watching closely. When I looked at the email briefly that we got from the USDA, that funding is allocated. It's going to be prioritized to people who have less than 25 megabytes right now, or MPS. So we have seen in a couple of the areas that the government standard is to get you to 25, not to 100. But moving along, our study is online. We have updated the reports. We are working on it regularly. We are getting ongoing feedback from town broadband committees and individual citizens. And I believe that our effort tonight was to discuss with this committee the best way to move forward in approving a reimbursement of $30,000 for CEDC in connection with phase 1 of the broadband. At the same time, I understand from the ARPA committee, there was some interest in having us move forward with the phase 2, which we have identified, and which our working group, which includes Supervisor Knott, Supervisor Hoetling, Supervisor Basson, and Supervisor Riley and Bury, we presented to them the phase 2 study proposal, along with several representatives of various broadband town committees, and they unanimously approved moving forward with that phase. So the question is, would you prefer to simply reimburse us for this phase 1 of the study at this point, or because these funds may be or most likely reimbursable from federal sources, would you approve the funding for phase 2? So the resolution that we've drafted is for approval of engaging CEDC for $60,000. But if there was any question that you would rather delay and do 30 now and 30 later, we could certainly amend that resolution.
Somebody has a hand up. I can't see who it is.
That's me, Supervisor Bury. Yeah, I'm ignorant of phase 2. Could you give a quick rundown of what phase 2 is?
Phase 2 would be to begin to identify these federal programs and to find out, identify which ones would be most suitable for us, along with working to, the thought was, if you take the 1,200 addresses and you take about 350 of them away because of the 4 towns that have already been identified with pricing from the providers, that brings us, down to about 850. And then if, several providers are ready to provide us with the list of the 80 or 100 or 200, 300 homes that they're interested in serving on their periphery. And the goal there was to discourage people from building broad new infrastructure to get to those pockets of houses if somebody's already there. And then we think there'll be about 400 homes around the county that no one will want. And that's where it's going to be expensive to match those up. But it would be to coordinate all of that activity so that when the federal and program is implemented, whether it's through the states or through the towns or the county, we would have on the ground data, including pricing, including which providers are interested, to either have a RFP with a competition or a process to begin aligning those funds with the need to add broadband services.
I think it's worthwhile to get the entire payment up front, get it done now. We already have a bill that's due, and we're going to have another bill that's going to be due in short order. And we already agreed that the county would pay for this study.
And our feeling was that if it was authorized, then it's up, the county can pay it when they want to pay it, but at least it'll have been approved.
I completely agree with Supervisor Burey, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve this resolution for the $60,000.
I'll second.
I'll second that motion. And
Is there any
once again,
discussion?
what we're doing here is we need patience to get the federal money so we don't end up spending our ARPA money locally that is a fraction of the federal money being dedicated to this cause. And this phase 2 will help us with what I think is going to be the more important thing, underserved and folks with fiber options that are going to be needed in the future. So while we have 1,200 unserved, I think we have a tremendous higher number of underserved that are going to need real broadband for work at home and school at home.
John, the 1,200 include anyone below 100.
Yes, but again, that doesn't mean it's not wireless. It doesn't mean it's by air. It doesn't mean they have fiber.
That's right.
I think that phase 2 is going to help us set up our story for what I want federal funding for, which is fiber for everyone.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion, we've got a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mike, next up.
The next item on our agenda is the annual review of CEDC's budget. And, what has been the practice here, and I don't know if I have the ability to share the screen or not. But what we've done in the past is we're a separate entity. We're a not-for-profit corporation for New York State, but because the county does provide a significant percentage of our funding, we have always presented our budget in advance of you approving the allocation of through your budget process, not through this committee, but you do recommend and support the amount that we've asked for. And we're asking in this budget, and see if I can, there's a way to turn it so you can read it. I don't know, Jerry, if you can.
Maybe you can just tell us the difference, Mike.
Yeah, well, basically, we had been receiving $460,000 for many years. And then with COVID, the chairman and the supervisors asked that we reduce that, like all the other county departments, by 20%. And so this year we were at 368. We had discussed with the chairman increasing it back to the 460. And what we have done is we have included in our budget, which is a zero-based budget, going from 368 to 460, and it would result in us being able to retain staff, provide ongoing services related to our SBA and CEDC loan programs, our microbiz technical assistance program, and we have $50,000 included for new initiatives. Again, it's more for informational than it is for, how about that? Can you see that? No.
We're still up, steer to one side.
Anyway, it's our standard budget. What we are projecting for this year is that we're projecting a loss of $30,000, but because we had PPP twice, you won't see that. You'll see us forgiveness of PPP in 2 years, 2 PPP payments all in 1 year. So, we will have a balanced, we'll have a $47,000 surplus. But we felt that, we had some surplus. We felt we didn't want to cut back our services and our activities during COVID. And so our board allowed us to go into some of our reserve accounts for purposes of running a small deficit. Our total budget for next year would be 833,000. 460 of that from the county. That brings us down, to approximately, let's see, 460, 55%. We had been as high as 68% dependent on county funding. We've been able to increase the interest on our loan funds. We've been able to increase the amount from the SBA and other grants for technical services. And we've reestablished we get about $55,000 this year in membership and sponsorships. So, our goal was to get down to 50% county support from, earlier years, 4, 5, 6 years ago when it was, almost 70%.
What are you asking us to do, Mike?
I'm asking, what I'll do is I'll circulate this again to you each individually in the hopes that you would support in your other committees and as a board member, the increase that we've been discussing with the leadership of 460 for 2022.
Supervisor Shiminis.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the presentation of the budget, and I certainly appreciate all the work you've been doing for the county. Can you talk a little bit more about, I remember when I think it was from the Ginsburg sale, there was like 150,000 set aside for special projects, right? And what's the status on, we had talked about maybe doing 3 different projects at 50,000, and what's the status on that? And then if I understand you right, you're asking for the budget request that you're suggesting includes an additional $50,000 that would go towards the special projects line.
No.
Okay.
What we're asking for is, you're absolutely right. When we had finalized the Ginsburg, the DNJ sale, as we legally call it, there was $180,000 left over. And we agreed that we would allocate $60,000 for 3 years for the purpose of coordinating with you, although we're, again, independent for legal purposes, the use of those funds. So the first year we didn't use it because we didn't come up with anything that we felt was eligible or worthwhile to spend. Last year we did dip into it because of COVID and the reduction of you had reduced us by $92,000. We picked up 63 from PPP. So we did use some of that, and we used some of that this year. So we feel we've got $60,000 to $80,000 of those funds left. And we have not budgeted those this year because the $50,000 in new initiatives is in our budget without. So we would have another 60 if there were other things that you wanted us to consider to work with you on.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything on this issue for Mike? Well,
we would just ask for your support in connection with the finalization of the county budget.
I definitely can support this. I think this is definitely a very important time for economic development going forward. This is not the time for us to pull back on any of this stuff. We got jobs that can't be filled. We have housing issues. We need to really focus on these issues, and Mike and CEDC will have a seat at the table with those kinds of discussions. So I can certainly support this.
Thank you. And we've cut back a little bit, and we've been cautious because we did get $64,000 against this year's budget, even though we're getting the cash this year and the reporting of income this year. We tied it back to what we had our loss from last year when we had a deficit because of the reduction in county funding. But with the PPP, we were able to make most of it up and continue to provide services.
So Mike,
The next item is, you'll recall back in February, the committee recommended to the full board that you approve the transfer of Lot 8 in the Simon Commerce Center to the County Industrial Development Agency for the purpose of a proposed sale to a development company that was attempting to put together deals for a Frito-Lay warehouse. That deal ultimately, even though they signed the contract and they walked away from a $7,500 in earnest money, that project went to a site on Route I-84 in Dutchess County instead of at Route 66 and 9H. So at the time, they had offered $120,000. We all thought that was exceeded fair market value by a significant amount, but we weren't going to, if that was what the buyer was willing to pay, we didn't turn it down. The problem we have now is the deal fell through, and we have Richard Coons who had purchased a site next door to that parcel at a bankruptcy sale, made a proposal to buy it for $80,000. I said to him that we couldn't really negotiate without a fair market value appraisal, so we used some of the $7,500 in earnest money that was left on the table from the previous proposal to hire Contra appraisal, and they came back with a fair market value price of $90,000. The issue was that the resolution authorizing the transfer by the county to the IDA in February, in the whereas clauses specifically recited that it was for a transfer to SAD Development Corporation, SAAD Development, and therefore we didn't feel it was appropriate to take that as a license to go ahead and sell it at a lower price to someone else. We do think that when you look at the appraised value, the market value on the assessments in the Commerce Park, the average of all of the assessments in the town of Claverack, which the site is in, is about $23,000 an acre. I'm sorry, $17,000 an acre. And this is $90,000 for a 3.625 acre parcel. Is $27,000 an acre. We feel that it is a fair market value price. I included the appraisal in the package that you received over the weekend. They did look at numerous prices, and the plan would be that they would build a 20,000 square foot warehouse. They're expanding their business to do more HVAC fabrication and installation and servicing. And they have 20 jobs and are committing to adding another 20 as a result of the work that they would be doing out of this new facility. Again, we would ask that you recommend, as provided for in the resolution, that the IDA be authorized, subject to review by the county attorney, of a purchase and sale contract to an entity called Salerno Drive LLC, owned by Richard Kuhn and partners, to proceed for this specific purpose. Again, if this doesn't falls through because of zoning or planning or other aspects, we would be back to you. The property would not transfer to the IDA, and you would again have a chance to identify or be approving whatever proposed use of it we came up with. I must say that in 5 or 6 years that I've been here, these have been the only two offers that we've had on this site or any other property in the Commerce Park.
Any thoughts?
Chairman, I think the jobs and the expansion of the business are more important than $10,000 or $20,000 on the purchase price. Either way, I would motion to accept the offer.
Can we get a second?
Yeah, I'll second that, Rick.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this issue?
Hold on.
I have a question.
Rick Scalera is not on the committee.
Oh,
I will second it, Bassett.
Thank you. Sorry. Sorry, Rick.
Supervisor Shimides?
Nice try. Michael, you talked about the job growth, and does the contract include any sort of requirements? Not the contract with the IDA, but the IDA's contract with the buyer, any sort of requirements about expectations for what the development is, or if there's not development over a certain time period, something would happen?
Yes, we had talked about that with them. And, in response to anticipating that question, I had emailed them and asked them when they anticipated starting construction. And they said as soon after closing as the planning board allowed. So I think that we do want to put some type of a penalty in there that it's not they don't end up acquiring it and for whatever reason, not inferring any bad intent, but that it becomes speculation and we have another vacant site in the Commerce Park that we have to wait for somebody to sell on a private basis. So we will include that in the contract and have the county attorney review it before the sale.
I have a
And then does the
question
IDA
regarding
board
the-
also vote on resolution?
Yes, the IDA board would be voting next November 2nd. And I also have to submit this to the Authority Budget Office because it is a sale under the public lands law that is exempt from negotiation, or I'm sorry, it's exempt from public bidding because it's going through the IDA and not the county.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The final item today in the next 7 minutes are two solar projects. One proposed by East Light Partners. It's the Rojan Solar Project in the town of Claremont, and the Clover Meadow Solar Project proposed by Eden Renewables in the town of Clavering. As you know, the county had asked CEDC to review and administer pilot agreements for projects under 5 megawatts. Both of these are under 5 megawatts in coordination with the respective town and school district that's involved, and only have county and only allow the resolution only allows for the chairman to sign once the town has approved it. So we're in a situation where the town supervisor, if they're not authorized to sign or opposed to the project for any reason and don't sign, then the county's not getting out ahead of home rule and local jurisdiction. In these cases, the developer goes to the town generally first, and then the pilot payment is split 50% between the school, 50% goes to the school district, and then 25% to the town and 25% to the county. Now, East Light has generally offered $3,000 a megawatt. So, what you're talking about is a $15,000 payment, where $7,500 to the school district and $3,750 to the town and to the county, respectively. Eden has come in these projects and offered $3,500 a kilowatt. What's happened is in the towns where that has become, in Claverick, for instance, East Light has had to enter into an agreement to some community benefits. Again, I think that we have advised the towns that some developers are offering more than others. But again, based on the home rule, we've kind of, because they're within $500 a megawatt, and on a 5 megawatt project, that's $2,500 a year total out of, the difference between 15,000 and 17,500. We've kind of left it to the towns, but I wanted you to be aware of the fact that some developers are making the argument that they had to pay more for the land and therefore they have to pay less. But right at this point, we share that with the supervisors, and we also let them finalize what the arrangement is. And the school district has gone along with this as well.
Any discussion?
So I would ask that these two be approved, subject to receiving 25% of the respective proposed pilot amount, and subject to the town executing the agreement before the county does, anyone does on the county's behalf.
Mike, just to clarify, and just so I understand, the towns and the school districts involved are okay with this, right?
Yep, the county, we've set it up that the county is last to sign, and if the other two don't sign, we don't sign.
So the towns and the school districts are okay.
Yep.
Okay, then I will move this. Both
Now-
of them.
In the case of the one in Claverick, the town board and the school district have already signed. And in the case of Claremont, it's before the town, and I've spoken to,
We'll be able to
I
negotiate
have a
that.
call into the supervisor there. So, the one will be signed right away, but the other will be dependent on whether they get final approval at the town level.
I'll
Okay,
second
we
the
have a
motion,
We
or
have a
both the
second.
motions.
Any other discussion on this issue?
Was there it's not the life of the project though, is it like 15 years?
It's for 15 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And the under 5 megawatts are only viable because they're going into the distribution system. So, they can't build more than 5 megawatts if there's not adequate power lines to take the product out.
I think we actually voted no from the Farmland Protection Board on one of those, but if their planning board is gonna approve it anyway.
I think that was the case of one of the previous Claverick projects, or Livingston. It may have been Livingston.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions or discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. Both resolutions have passed. Is there anything else from Mike?
From Mike or for Mike?
I have nothing else for you, and it's 5:59, which I can't believe we were able to get all this accomplished. So thank you.
Mike, thank you. It's always good to talk to you.
Well, keep those cards and letters coming. We're here to help, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of you. And I appreciate all of your support.
Okay, is there anything else for economic development tonight?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.